Today, I am going to provide you with a comprehensive guide on how to create high-quality, homemade feed for your chickens and ducks, a type of feed that is completely under your control and that no one can interfere with. There has been a significant amount of discussion recently regarding various commercial brands of poultry feed. Many people have been diving down a deep rabbit hole, questioning who actually produces these feeds and whether there is a possibility that the supply has been intentionally sabotaged. The primary concern stems from the fact that many poultry owners have reported that their chickens suddenly stop laying eggs altogether. Given these circumstances, I believe there is no better way to guarantee the absolute integrity and nutritional value of what your birds are eating than by producing the feed yourself. You can always achieve a superior result when you take matters into your own hands and oversee the entire production process from start to finish. This transition to homemade feed is not just a sudden reaction to recent news. It is something that we have been seriously considering and researching in our household for quite a long time, well before the stories of sabotage feed began to circulate. Our motivation is rooted in a fundamental belief, or rather a realization, that there is a very strong possibility we will encounter a situation in our lifetime that forces us to be self-reliant. We may find ourselves in a position where we are unable to acquire essential goods from a traditional store for an extended period, or perhaps even for the foreseeable future. We have already witnessed how fragile the global supply chain can be and how easily it can be disrupted by external factors. Consequently, we strive to be as self-sufficient as possible within the limits of our current circumstances. We are constantly evaluating our lifestyle through the lens of how we would provide for our basic needs without any assistance from the outside world if it ever became necessary. Maintaining our poultry is a cornerstone of this self-sufficiency strategy. Our birds are a vital resource, providing us with a consistent supply of eggs and, if the situation required it, a source of meat. Furthermore, because they reproduce, they theoretically represent an unending source of protein right in our own backyard. In a worst-case scenario where everything else fails, the birds could feed us. However, this raises a critical question. How would we feed them if we have become entirely dependent on store-bought, processed feed? To be fair, our birds are allowed to free range. So during the lush summer months, they could likely forage for enough insects and vegetation to survive on their own. However, during the harsh winters we experience here in Maine, the landscape turns into a frozen wasteland. I am quite certain that without our direct intervention and supplemental feeding, they would struggle to survive. I have spent a great deal of time thinking deeply about the logistics of homemade chicken feed. After conducting extensive research, I discovered that the process is actually not as complicated as one might initially assume. The primary ingredients consist of a variety of whole grains and seeds. The main challenge is simply determining a specific mixture that provides the correct balance of essential nutrients for your birds. There is a vast array of different ingredients that you can incorporate into your recipes. We have compiled a detailed list of many common ingredients along with their specific protein contents. You certainly do not need to use every single item on this list. One of the aspects I appreciate most about the concept of homemade feed is the inherent flexibility. You can mix it up and change the formula. It does not have to be identical every single time. The ingredients you select can vary based on what is locally available, what you can find at the best price, or what you happen to have on hand. I have organized my ingredient list by protein content, ranging from the highest to the lowest. There are numerous charts available online that list the protein percentages for these items, and as you purchase your ingredients, you will find this information listed on the packaging as well. What we are specifically looking for is the crude protein content. If a product is sold specifically as animal feed, the crude protein will be clearly listed. If you are using human-grade ingredients, the label will typically list the grams of protein per serving. Later on, I will demonstrate exactly how to calculate the crude protein percentage from that human-grade labeling information. As I gathered my supplies, I found myself constantly updating my charts because protein levels can vary slightly depending on the specific producer, the crop yield, and other environmental factors. While I did not purchase every possible ingredient on my list, I did secure a good variety of what was accessible to me. On my list, you will notice two specific ingredients: fish meal, and soybean meal. I chose not to purchase these, although I included them because they are frequently found in many homemade feed recipes. They are popular because they are both exceptionally high in protein and are generally cost-effective depending on your geographic location. However, both are somewhat controversial. Many people prefer to avoid soy entirely, seeking a soy-free feed, primarily because soy is a crop that is often highly genetically modified. There are also various health and allergy-related reasons why people choose to exclude it. As for fish meal, some avoid it because it can be prone to contamination with heavy metals. Because of these concerns and because I could not find a source that I felt completely comfortable with, I am excluding them from my current feed formulations. There are several other essential ingredients that we want to ensure are included in our homemade poultry diet. I will be incorporating kelp into the mix. Specifically, I am using animal-grade kelp, which is significantly more affordable than the kelp processed for human consumption. I am also using animal-grade brewer's yeast for the same cost-saving reasons. These supplements provide a wide spectrum of vital nutrients. Kelp is rich in iodine and antioxidants, while brewer's yeast provides a high concentration of B vitamins and essential minerals. If you prefer not to use these individual supplements or cannot locate them, there is an alternative called Poultry NutriBalancer. I will provide information on where to find that as well. It is essentially an organic nutritional supplement that provides all the necessary vitamins and minerals in one package. It is a bit more expensive, which is why I opted for the kelp and brewer's yeast, but I am actually ordering some NutriBalancer just to have it in my inventory as a backup. I store these supplements in half-gallon glass jars after transferring them from the bags they arrived in. For daily use, I keep smaller amounts in half-pint jars with regular mouths, topped with recycled Parmesan cheese lids, which makes it very easy to scoop or shake out the required amount. I have decided not to mix these fine, powdery supplements directly into the large bins of grain. I have two reasons for this. First, because they are so fine, I am concerned they would simply settle to the bottom of the container and not be evenly distributed. Second, we plan on soaking and fermenting our feed before serving it, and I do not want these valuable powders to be poured off with the excess liquid. Therefore, I will add them at the actual time of feeding. Both of these supplements come with handy feeding charts that specify the exact dosage for your animals. Interestingly, I have also started adding small amounts to our dogs' and cats' food, and they seem to be enjoying the nutritional boost. Two other critical components you must have available for your poultry are oyster shells and grit. Oyster shells provide the necessary calcium for eggshell production in laying hens. This should be offered free choice, meaning you put it in a separate container and let the birds eat as much as they feel they need. You do not need to mix it into the primary feed. Another excellent source of calcium is crushed up eggshells from your own birds. We reuse our eggshells for many things, particularly in the garden, so we do not always have a surplus, which is why I keep oyster shells on hand. Grit is also essential for chickens, ducks, and other poultry to help them grind down and digest their food. Since our birds free range, they likely pick up enough small stones and pebbles from the ground to satisfy this need, but we still provide it free choice just to be safe, especially during the winter when the ground is covered in snow. The specific feed recipes I am preparing today are designed for laying hens, as that is the primary stage of life our birds are in right now. It is important to remember that growing chicks or meat birds, broilers, have different nutritional requirements. However, layer feed is generally what most people are looking to produce at home. For a high-quality layer feed, you want to achieve a protein content of at least 16%. It can certainly be higher, but it should not fall below that threshold. I have developed a few recipes that land just slightly above that 16% mark. In our specific situation, we have both ducks and chickens living and eating together, and there is no practical way to separate them during mealtime. Ducks generally require a slightly higher protein intake than chickens. To address this, I have created 3 different recipes, 2 that are around 17% protein, perfect for chickens, and one that is closer to 20% protein, which is better suited for a mixed flock of chickens and ducks. I have decided to mix these recipes in small batches of approximately 10 pounds at a time. I find this volume much more manageable to mix thoroughly by hand compared to trying to process massive quantities all at once. We typically purchase commercial feed in 40 or 50-pound bags, so mixing 4 or 5 of these 10-pound batches is the equivalent of one standard bag. Another major advantage of small batch mixing is that it allows me to test the different recipes and observe how the birds respond. I want to see if there are certain grains they pick out and leave behind. By starting small, I can refine the formula based on their preferences before committing to a very large quantity of feed. To develop these recipes, we listed every ingredient available to us, along with its protein content and the cost per pound. If you do this yourself, your prices will likely differ from mine based on your location and the stores available to you. If you live in a highly agricultural region, you might have access to better bulk pricing. I ordered the majority of my ingredients from Azure Standard, which is a great resource available to most people in the country. They have drop locations where you can pick up your order, or they can ship directly to you. If you buy in large enough quantities, you can even become your own drop point. I initially thought they didn't have a location near me, but when I checked again recently, I found a drop point just 10 minutes away. It is definitely worth rechecking their website even if you have looked in the past. Let's look at the beautiful whole grains and seeds we are using. First, we have whole corn. One of the best things about corn is that it is extremely inexpensive. While it is relatively low in protein, it serves as an excellent filler. Some people prefer to avoid corn entirely, and you can certainly do that, but we are including it right now because it is still winter in Maine. Corn provides extra energy that helps the birds stay warm during freezing nights. As the weather warms up, we will likely reduce the amount of corn in the mix. Next, we have wheat. I am using hard red wheat. You could use soft white wheat, but the hard red variety has a higher protein content. This is the same high-quality wheat we store for our own human consumption, which I find very efficient. Then we have whole oats. You can use regular old-fashioned oats if that is what you have. But whole oats are superior because they retain more nutrients and have a higher protein content than processed versions. We are also using split peas. I love this ingredient because, again, it is something we already store for ourselves. I found a great deal on these, and they are a fantastic protein booster, containing about 24 to 25% protein. They are one of the most affordable ways to increase the overall protein level of the feed. We also have barley, which is another excellent whole grain. There are many other grains you could use, such as milo, sorghum, but I don't have any today because it was out of stock when I placed my order. Next is flaxseed, which I consider a true superfood for poultry. Flaxseed is loaded with omega-3 fatty acids, which are beneficial for heart, joint, and brain health. By including flax in the feed, we are essentially biofortifying our eggs. When you see expensive eggs at the store labeled as having high omega-3 content, it is often because those hens were fed flax. It is a higher cost ingredient, but because it is so nutrient-dense and high in protein, a little goes a long way. We are also using black oil sunflower seeds, often called Boss. These are fantastic for homemade feed because they are rich in healthy oils and fats, which will make the bird's feathers look glossy and healthy. Finally, I have an ingredient called meaties, which are mostly hulled striped sunflower seeds. I included these to provide raw sunflower seeds for their potential natural deworming properties, although they are more expensive and lower in protein than the black oil variety, so I may phase them out in the future as I refine my recipes. To calculate the protein content without a spreadsheet, you simply take the weight of each ingredient and multiply it by its protein percentage. Expressed as a decimal, so 9% becomes 0.09. For example, if a recipe has 3 pounds of corn at 9% protein, you multiply 3 by 0.09 to get 0.27. You do this for every ingredient in the 10-pound batch, add those results together, and then divide the total by 10. This gives you the final protein percentage. This customization is the beauty of the system. You can adjust the formula for the seasons, adding more corn and fats in the winter to help them maintain weight and warmth, or boosting protein if you notice egg production is dropping. Here's the breakdown of the 3 recipes I am mixing today. Recipe number 1 is a simple, balanced blend. 30% corn, 30% wheat, 20% split peas, 10% flaxseed, and 10% whole oats. This results in a protein content of just over 17% and costs me about 65 cents per pound. I am using a digital scale to weigh everything out into flexible tubs I found at the dollar store. These tubs are great because they make it easy to stir the ingredients and then pour the finished mix into a larger storage container. For long-term storage, metal garbage cans are ideal because they are rodent-proof. Mice and rats cannot chew through the metal, and the lid stays secure against most pests. I want to be clear about my expectations for this homemade feed. First and foremost, I expect it to be significantly healthier. I truly believe that feeding our birds whole, real foods rather than processed commercial pellets will result in more nutritious eggs and healthier birds. Second, I expect our birds to be much happier. I often think about how monotonous it would be to eat the same processed kibble every single day. This variety of whole grains allows them to engage in natural foraging behaviors. Third, I expect this to make us more sustainable and SHTF, shit hits the fan, proof. We now have the knowledge to feed our animals regardless of store availability. Whole grains store much longer than processed feed, and since many of these ingredients are also human food, it simplifies our emergency storage and ensures we are rotating our supplies regularly. What I am not expecting is for this to be cheaper. If you are used to buying the cheapest, lowest quality processed feed available, making your own will definitely cost more. The commercial junk we were buying cost about 36 cents a pound, and almost all of my individual whole grain ingredients cost more than that. However, I believe the trade-off in health and self-sufficiency is well worth the extra cost. To help offset the price, we are going to start soaking and fermenting the feed. This process makes the nutrients more bioavailable and increases the volume of the food, meaning the birds actually need to eat less to get the same amount of nutrition. We will also continue to provide kitchen scraps and allow them to forage in our compost pile for bugs and vegetables. In the future, I am also planning to start raising mealworms and black soldier fly larvae to supplement their protein and calcium needs. I am not a fan of insects, but if I can manage to do it, anyone can. This homemade feed is infinitely adaptable. If there is an ingredient you don't like or can't find, just swap it for something else. Recipe number 2, which is higher in protein for our ducks, consists of 20% black oil sunflower seeds, 20% wheat, 10% flaxseed, 10% meaties, 10% split peas, 10% oats, 10% barley, and 10% corn. This hits 20% protein at 72 cents a pound. Recipe number 3 is a corn-free option, 25% barley, 25% wheat, 15% oats, 15% split peas, 10% flaxseed, and 10% black oil sunflower seeds. This one is 18% protein and costs 66 cents a pound. These whole grain blends are far superior to store-bought pellets. The industrial process of grinding, heating, and extruding grains into pellets destroys a lot of the natural nutrition. Furthermore, once a grain is ground up, it begins to lose its nutritional value very quickly due to oxidation. By using whole grains, we are providing the highest possible quality. When you introduce this new feed to your birds, do it gradually by mixing it with their old feed and slowly increasing the ratio over a week or two. A general rule of thumb is to provide about half a cup of feed per bird per day, though you can reduce this if you are fermenting the feed or if they are finding a lot of their own food while free-ranging. Finally, as promised, here is how you calculate protein from a human-grade food label. Look for the grams of protein per serving and the serving size in grams. For example, if a bag of split peas says there are 12 grams of protein in a 49-gram serving, you simply divide 12 by 49. This gives you 0.24 or 24% protein. It is a simple calculation that allows you to use almost anything from the grocery store in your poultry feed formulations. This journey towards self-sufficiency is about gaining the knowledge and adaptability to thrive no matter what the future holds. If this deep dive into the world of self-sufficient poultry care has changed the way you look at those bags of feed or the birds in your backyard, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. We are dedicated to uncovering the traditional skills and self-reliance methods that the modern world has often overlooked. Join us as we cultivate a more secure future, one grain at a time. Our next exploration into the treasures of self-sufficiency will be opening very soon. Be sure to stay tuned.